Craig Mulligan. On July 31st, 2021, emergency responders in Sarn, Bridgend, South Wales, discovered 5-year-old Logan Mwangi in the River Ogmore. Craig Mulligan had moved into the household just 5 days earlier, arriving on July 26, 2021. Born in 2007, Mulligan was the stepson of John Cole, having been raised by him since infancy. The family dynamics were troubled from the start, setting the stage for what would become one of Wales' most disturbing cases. Earlier that year, Mulligan's biological mother had been sectioned under the Mental Health Act after harming him, placing him in local authority care for 6 months. Foster families reported deeply troubling behavior during this period. He spoke openly about wanting to harm Logan, referring to him dismissively as the 5-year-old, rather than using his name. These families warned social workers that placing Mulligan back would be dangerous, describing it as throwing a lit match into a powder keg. The warnings were specific, documented, and urgent, yet they were not heeded. Despite multiple warnings from concerned foster carers, Mulligan returned to live with Cole and Angharad Williamson, Logan's mother. The household operated under strict, punitive rules. Logan was isolated during the pandemic lockdown and subjected to an environment where fear dominated daily life. Mulligan idolized Cole and sought his approval constantly, willing to do anything to gain acceptance and validation from the man he saw as his father figure. On the night of July 30th, Logan sustained 63 external injuries alongside catastrophic internal damage. The trauma was extensive, with pathologists comparing it to high-velocity impact. The incident escalated after a broken stereo triggered household rage. Security camera footage captured Mulligan and Cole disposing of Logan's body in the river, then separately disposing of his torn pajama top. The footage showed their movements clearly, providing investigators with undeniable visual evidence of what transpired. Police arrested all three on August 1st, 2021. The surveillance footage provided undeniable proof of movements. Forensic pathologists documented injuries indicating prolonged suffering. Initial denials crumbled under physical evidence and investigator timelines. The medical evidence alone painted a devastating picture of what Logan endured in his final hours. At Cardiff Crown Court in 2022, prosecutors presented medical evidence, video surveillance, and foster family testimony. All 3 defendants were convicted. The judge noted Mulligan had sought Cole's approval through his actions and witnessed Logan's suffering, but did nothing to help. The trial revealed the extent of the household dysfunction and the complete failure of protective systems. Mulligan's childhood featured instability and harmful influences. Foster families described him as aggressive, fascinated with dark themes, and hostile toward Logan. He resented being in care while Logan remained with family. Social services faced criticism for ignoring explicit warnings. A safeguarding inquiry was promised for autumn 2022. Cole's background included involvement with extremist groups and aggressive behavior, creating a toxic environment where harm could flourish unchecked. On June 30th, 2022, Mulligan received life with a minimum of 15 years before parole consideration. He remains incarcerated, likely transitioning from youth to adult facilities as he ages. But family betrayal can take different forms across continents. Rashawn Weaver and Luciano Lewis. December 11th, 2019, brought tragedy to Morningside Park, Manhattan. Tessa Majors, 18, a Barnard College freshman, entered the park after sunset. 3 individuals had been watching for opportunity. The park, normally a shortcut for students, would become the site of a senseless act that shook the entire city. Rashawn Weaver and Luciano Lewis, both 14, had entered the park with a third companion. Born April 3rd and February 22nd, 2005. Both were New York City residents who decided to target someone for robbery. They had followed another person earlier, but abandoned that attempt. When they spotted Majors walking alone, they acted. The decision was spontaneous, driven by opportunity rather than any personal connection or grievance. Weaver approached from behind, grabbing Majors in a chokehold while demanding money. Majors fought back, biting Weaver's hand hard enough to leave marks that would later become crucial evidence. Lewis assisted in restraining her. When Majors refused to comply, Weaver stabbed her 4 times, one wound piercing her heart. The attack lasted just over a minute. Despite catastrophic injuries, Majors stumbled upstairs where a security guard found her moments later. She was declared deceased shortly after hospital arrival. Her final moments showed remarkable courage as she fought against 3 attackers. The 3 fled immediately, believing they had escaped undetected. Majors' fierce resistance left evidence they couldn't erase. Lewis was arrested December 12, 2019, one day after the incident, released, then re-arrested February 2020, as investigators built their case. Weaver remained at large until December 26th, when investigators tracked him down. The bite mark and DNA evidence proved irrefutable. Skin cells from beneath Majors' fingernails matched Weaver's genetic profile with astronomical odds against random chance. Surveillance footage established timelines and movements throughout the evening. Interviews with the 13-year-old revealed Weaver initiated the robbery plan, though weapon use wasn't originally discussed. The youngest member handed the knife but didn't participate directly in the attack, affecting his later sentencing. His cooperation with investigators also provided crucial details about planning and execution. Both were indicted as adults, given severity and circumstances. Lewis pleaded guilty September 21, 2021, to second-degree charges and first-degree robbery, receiving 9 years to life on October 14th. Weaver pleaded guilty December 16, 2021, receiving 14 years to life on January 19, 2022. The third individual received 18 months in youth facilities. The sentencing reflected different levels of involvement and cooperation. During his plea, Weaver stated, "I intentionally caused the death of Tessa Majors by stabbing her with a knife." His words were clinical, devoid of emotion. He later expressed regret, saying he'd give anything to reverse time. Though such statements offered little comfort to grieving family members. Lewis serves at Franklin Correctional Facility, where records show involvement in multiple incidents with inmates and staff. Weaver is held at Lakeview Shock Incarceration. Both will eventually face parole consideration, though approval remains uncertain given conviction's nature and institutional behavior patterns. From street encounters, we turn to planned family betrayal. Pietro Masso. In the early morning hours of April 17, 1991, neighbors in Montecchia di Crosara, Italy, were awakened by frantic pounding. Pietro Masso, 19, appeared claiming he'd found signs of a break-in with his parents missing. His panic seemed genuine. Authorities responded to an apparent home invasion. Within 48 hours, truth emerged. Not random incident, but a calculated betrayal. Pietro was born into prosperous farming family. Parents Antonio Masso, 52, and Maria Rosa Tessari, 48, had built a comfortable life through hard work. They owned a successful farm with significant savings, providing opportunities for their son and 2 daughters. Pietro had different priorities. He dropped out of agricultural school, was expelled from seminary, and avoided military service. Rather than pursuing education, he devoted himself to an expensive lifestyle funded by his parents' generosity and loans he couldn't repay. Pietro's spending spiraled out of control. He purchased luxury items, threw parties, and maintained appearances that his means couldn't support. When loans proved insufficient, he forged a check, draining parents' savings without their knowledge. His parents questioned his choices and may have discovered the deception. For Pietro, the solution was the removal of obstacles to inheritance. This wasn't impulsive. Pietro had attempted twice before. He tried causing a gas explosion, which failed. He attempted a fatal car crash, but his parents survived. These failures only delayed plans. Pietro recruited 3 friends: Giorgio Carbognin, 18, Paolo Cavazza, 18, and Damiano Burato, 17. He promised inheritance shares for their help. On the night of April 16, 1991, Pietro met his accomplices. They waited for Antonio and Maria Rosa to return from an evening out, then ambushed them at home. Wearing masks, Pietro struck his father with iron pipe, while friends used saucepans and physical force. Maria Rosa received similar treatment before being suffocated with cotton. After taking their lives, Pietro staged a robbery scene, scattering belongings and smashing furniture. They disposed of blood-soaked clothing and weapons, then separated to establish alibis. Pietro waited hours before discovering the scene and alerting neighbors. Investigators noted inconsistencies immediately. The staged robbery seemed too neat in some ways, too chaotic in others. Pietro's sisters discovered an unauthorized withdrawal from their parents' account. Most damning were conversations among the 4 young men. One accomplice spoke to someone who contacted authorities. On April 19, 1991, police arrested Pietro. Confronted with evidence and co-conspirator betrayal, he confessed, leading authorities to others. All 4 faced prosecution. The trial at Verona Court d'Assises captured national attention. Psychiatric evaluations determined all were legally sane. On February 29, 1992, verdicts were delivered. Pietro received 30 years with diminished capacity recognized. Carbognin and Cavazza each received 26 years. Burato received 13 years as a minor. In 2007 interview, years into his sentence, Pietro reflected, "I couldn't save myself. At least I try with others." He worked with at-risk youth. Upon release in 2013, after 22 years, he published a book exploring remorse and redemption. In a meeting with Pope Francis, Pietro described himself as having been evil, seeking forgiveness. His post-prison life was complicated. In 2016, he faced an investigation for allegedly extorting his sisters, resulting in psychiatric hospitalization for substance issues. He worked various jobs, including with a Catholic broadcaster and as a gardener for a nonprofit. Yet some motives defy all conventional understanding. Murder of Iwa Matsuo. On July 26, 2014, police in Sasebo, Japan, responded to disturbing internet forum posts. Someone uploaded photographs showing a room covered in blood with detailed descriptions. Officers traced posts to an apartment where a 15-year-old lived alone. Inside, they found 15-year-old Iwa Matsuo, a classmate of the resident. The scene suggested methodical execution rather than rage or panic. The apartment resident, also 15, had invited Matsuo over under friendship pretense. Once Matsuo arrived, the host attacked with a metal tool until she lost consciousness, then strangled her. What followed revealed true intentions: decapitation, hand severance, and abdominal cutting. These weren't acts of passion or defense. They were deliberate, carried out with tools purchased specifically for this purpose. After photographing the scene, she posted images online with descriptions, seemingly proud and eager to share with strangers. Posts led investigators directly to her location, resulting in Sunday arrest following the incident. The individual stated plainly, "I wanted to kill someone. I bought the tools by myself." This wasn't an accident or a plan gone wrong, but a premeditated act driven by what she described as curiosity. She wanted to know what taking a life felt like, then to dissect a body, treating a human being as nothing more than an experiment. Warning signs appeared long before. The previous year, she physically attacked her father with a bat, displaying aggressive tendencies, warranting immediate intervention. She also took a cat's life, dismembering it in a manner foreshadowing later actions. Her apartment contained medical textbooks and anatomy guides, suggesting an extended planning period. Most disturbing, a psychiatrist who evaluated her explicitly warned, if she is left as she is, she could kill someone. This warning went unheeded. No significant action protect potential targets or provide the intensive intervention clearly needed. Her father allowed her to live alone, despite history and psychiatrists' concerns. A decision proving fatal for Matsuo. Because the individual was 15, her identity has been protected under Japanese law. She confessed immediately upon arrest, providing details matching physical evidence and online posts. She confirmed acting alone, entirely her idea and execution. A psychiatric evaluation was ordered to determine the mental state and responsibility level. The evaluation outcome and sentence specifics haven't been made public, consistent with Japan's approach to cases involving those under 18. What's known is that 3 officials were formally reprimanded for failing to act on the psychiatrist's warning, acknowledging the system had opportunities to prevent the tragedy, but didn't take them. The individual's father later took his own life, unable to live with the knowledge of what his daughter did and perhaps his role in failing to protect Matsuo. He issued a public apology to Matsuo's family, expressing devastation, but words proved insufficient comfort for the family robbed of their child. As of 2025, no updates have been released regarding the individual's status or location. The next case involves planning that chills the soul. Aaron Campbell. The Isle of Bute, a small Scottish island community where everyone knows everyone, became the site of an unthinkable tragedy in the early hours of July 2nd, 2018. 6-year-old Alicia MacPhail was visiting her grandparents for the summer, sleeping peacefully while the family rested nearby. By dawn, she'd be gone, discovered in a wooded area, taken by someone who entered the house for a different reason. But upon seeing the sleeping child, decided to act on harbored impulses. Aaron Campbell was 16 at the time. Born in 2002 in Shrewsbury, England, he moved to the Isle of Bute as a young child. He was popular among peers, known for attending parties and expressing social media success aspirations. Beneath the surface lay a deeply troubled individual whose thoughts and behaviors should have prompted serious concern long before encountering Alicia. Campbell entered the MacPhail home initially looking for items he believed were inside. Upon finding himself near where Alicia slept, he later admitted thoughts turned immediately to taking her life. He carried the small child from bed, transported her to a secluded wooded area, and subjected her to assault. Forensic examiners documented 117 separate injuries. Campbell ended her life, then attempted to cover her tracks by disposing of clothing in the sea and retrieving his mobile device from a hiding spot. The community awoke to the news that Alicia was missing, sparking a massive search. Her body was discovered in a wooded area that morning, injury extent immediately indicating a deliberate act of extreme harm. Surveillance footage proved crucial. Cameras captured Campbell's movements throughout the relevant period, placing him near MacPhail's residence, then showing travel to the wooded area and back. DNA evidence collected from Alicia matched Campbell's genetic profile with 1,000,000,000 to 1 odds. Fibers from his clothing were found on Alicia. A blade and discarded clothing were recovered from locations Campbell visited. Despite overwhelming evidence, Campbell initially denied involvement. He attempted to redirect suspicion toward his girlfriend. This fabrication collapsed quickly under scrutiny. Faced with irrefutable physical evidence, Campbell eventually confessed to social workers, providing details only the responsible person could know. During interviews and proceedings, Campbell made statements revealing depravity depth. He told investigators he was quite satisfied with what he'd done. He struggled to stop himself from laughing during the trial while hearing testimony about Alicia's suffering. He admitted all he thought about was taking her life once he saw her sleeping, suggesting not sudden impulse, but a manifestation of thoughts entertained for some time. Investigation into the background revealed multiple unaddressed warning signs. Campbell experienced harm from family members, creating a traumatic developmental environment. He suffered depression and engaged in self-harm. He'd been evaluated for attention disorders, but never received a formal diagnosis or comprehensive treatment. Most chilling were device messages indicating he'd contemplated taking life for the lifetime experience, and entertained thoughts about assault and interaction with deceased individuals. These messages predated his encounter with Alicia, demonstrating Campbell had been considering such acts for an extended period. Yet no intervention addressed dangerous ideations. Device searches after the incident included queries about how police find DNA, showing he understood gravity and actively tried avoiding consequences. At trial in the Glasgow High Court, Campbell pleaded not guilty despite the evidence. The jury convicted him on February 21, 2019. On March 21, 2019, he received life with a minimum of 27 years before parole eligibility, later reduced on appeal to 24 years, meaning Campbell will be at least 40 before consideration for release. The judge described him as cold, calculating, and remorseless, noting his predatory nature and complete lack of empathy. In 2024, Campbell was transferred from Polmont Young Offenders Institution to HMP Glen O'Chiel, an adult prison. While at Polmont, he was targeted by other inmates. His transfer reflects aging out of the young offender system. Campbell becomes eligible for parole consideration in 2042 at 40 years old. Whether he'll ever be released remains to be seen, as parole boards must determine if he poses a continued societal threat. Given the action's nature and demonstrated lack of remorse, release seems unlikely regardless of the minimum term. Sometimes the threat comes from within the family itself. Aaron Caffey. March 1st, 2008, began like any other day for the Caffey family in Alba, Texas. By sunrise, their home would be consumed by flames, and 3 family members would be gone. Penny Caffey, 37, and her sons Matthew, 13, and Tyler, 8, lost their lives that night. Terry Caffey, the father, survived despite being shot 5 times, his survival a miracle, eventually leading investigators to an unthinkable truth. His own daughter orchestrated the attack. Aaron Caffey was 16, raised in a devout Baptist household where faith and family formed a daily life foundation. She was homeschooled using a Bible-based curriculum, accommodating attention-related challenges while keeping her close to parents' values and oversight. She sang in the church choir, appeared typical teenager navigating usual adolescent struggles within the protective structure her parents provided. That structure became conflict source when Erin began dating Charlie Wilkinson, a relationship her parents disapproved of due to his influence. Terry and Penny Caffey had forbidden Erin from continuing her relationship with Wilkinson, believing he wasn't good for their daughter and the relationship moved too quickly. For most teenagers, parental disapproval might lead to arguments, secret meetings, or other normal rebellion forms. For Erin, the solution was elimination. She began planning what she described to investigators: complete family eradication so she could be with Wilkinson without interference. This wasn't an impulsive decision made in the heat of the moment. Erin spent a month carefully planning, discussing with Wilkinson and friend Charles Wade how they'd carry out the attack. She'd even asked a previous boyfriend to take her family's lives before meeting Wilkinson. Suggesting this tendency toward extreme solutions predated the current relationship. She provided detailed information about the home layout, when the family would be sleeping, and where to find them. On March 1st night, Wilkinson and Wade entered Caffey's home armed with a firearm and bladed weapons. Erin waited outside with Bobby Johnson, another recruited friend. Inside, Wilkinson and Wade moved through the house. Penny tried protecting her younger son, Tyler, but both were taken. Matthew was also lost that night. Terry, awakening to chaos, was shot 5 times but somehow remained alive as attackers set fire to destroy evidence. Immediately after the attack, while still at the scene, Erin reportedly said to her companions, "Holy nonsense, that was awesome." Her excitement showed no remorse, no trace of horror at what she orchestrated, only satisfaction that her plan succeeded. She'd gotten exactly what she wanted, or so she thought. Terry Caffey survived fire and shooting, though barely. His testimony proved essential to identifying those responsible. All 4 individuals were arrested same day in the trailer where Wade stayed. Confronted with Terry's survival and statement, denials quickly fell apart. The evidence was overwhelming. Forensic scene examination confirmed the timeline Terry provided. Attack weapons were recovered. Most damning were confessions. Erin, Wilkinson, Wade, and Johnson all eventually admitted their roles, though accounts differed on specifics like who suggested the plan first and who carried out which actions. Prosecutors offered plea agreements to avoid lengthy trials. All 4 accepted deals, sending them to prison for decades. Erin received 2 life sentences plus 25 additional years, making her eligible for parole consideration only when reaching 59. Wilkinson and Wade both received life without parole, meaning they'll die in prison barring appeals or sentence changes. Johnson, who waited outside and didn't directly participate in taking lives, received 40 years. In 2024 interview, Erin described how the plan began, how she manipulated Wilkinson by telling him, "If you love me, you'll do it," using his feelings as leverage to convince him to carry out acts he might not have considered alone. She took advantage of his devotion, weaponizing emotions to achieve her goal. Terry Caffey, despite losing his wife and 2 sons to his daughter's actions, eventually found it within himself to forgive Erin. He stated publicly that Jesus would have spared their lives, that forgiveness was the path forward, even though pain would never fully heal. He has since remarried and works as a minister, dedicating his life to faith while carrying that terrible night's weight. Erin remains incarcerated at a facility in Gatesville, Texas. She won't be eligible for parole until 2068, by which time she'll have spent the majority of her life behind bars. Yet some acts of betrayal come not from strangers, but from those who claim to be friends. Karen Severson and Laura Doyle. On October 1st, 1985, Two 17-year-olds lured their friend to a creek in Angeles National Forest. Michelle Missy Avila, also 17, trusted Karen Severson and Laura Doyle completely. The three had known each other since childhood, with Severson and Avila becoming best friends at 8 years old. Doyle joined their circle later in school. What Missy didn't know was that the two people she trusted most had been planning her demise for weeks, driven by jealousy and resentment that had festered beneath the surface of their friendship. The trio drove to Big Tujunga Canyon Road, a remote area where few people ventured. Once there, Severson and Doyle attacked Missy at the creek, holding her down in just 6 inches of water until she drowned. They cut off her hair and pinned her body beneath a log, attempting to make it appear as though she had fallen and struck her head. The two then left, returning to their normal lives as if nothing had happened. They even participated in searches for Missy and attended her funeral, offering comfort to her grieving mother while hiding their terrible secret. What drove this betrayal? Jealousy over Missy's popularity formed the core motive. Missy was well liked at school, drew attention from boys, and seemed to navigate social situations with ease. Severson and Doyle accused her of inappropriate behavior with their boyfriends, spreading rumors about her character and moral conduct. These accusations appear to have been largely unfounded, born more from their own insecurity than any actual wrongdoing by Missy. Their resentment grew until they decided elimination was the only solution. Missy's body was discovered on October 4th, 1985, 3 days after she went missing. The case initially went cold despite suspicions about Severson and Doyle. Both maintained their innocence and continued their lives, with Severson even moving in with Missy's mother, Irene Avila, to help the grieving woman. She visited Missy's grave obsessively, a behavior that in hindsight appeared deeply disturbing given her role in creating that grave. The breakthrough came in July 1988 when witness Ava Chirumbolo came forward with information. Chirumbolo told investigators what she knew about the two girls' involvement, providing the evidence needed to move forward with arrests. Both Severson and Doyle were taken into custody and charged with first-degree ending of life. The case proceeded slowly through the legal system, with both defendants maintaining their innocence despite mounting evidence. At trial in March 1990, prosecutors presented evidence of the planning and execution of the attack. The jury heard testimony about jealousy, about rumors spread, about the calculated nature of luring Missy to a remote location. Both were convicted of second-degree charges rather than first-degree, with the jury apparently concluding the act wasn't premeditated to the degree required for the higher charge. They each received sentences of 15 years to life. In court, Irene Avila delivered a victim impact statement that captured her devastation. "My life has been shattered." The judge imposed the maximum sentence allowed, citing the violence and betrayal involved in the crime. Both served approximately 21 to 22 years before release. Severson was released in 2011, Doyle in 2012. What happened next sparked controversy that continues to this day. Severson published a memoir about her crime, attempting to profit from Missy's story. The move outraged Missy's family and the public, leading to the passage of Missy's Law in California in 2015, which prevents criminals from profiting from books or media deals about their crimes. As of 2025, both women maintain low profiles. Their whereabouts are not widely publicized, though they are believed to be living in California. If you've made it this far and enjoy deep dives into the most shocking criminal cases, hit that subscribe button and don't forget to press the bell icon. Friendships aren't the only relationships that can turn deadly when obsession takes hold. Michael Hernandez. On February 3, 2004, a typical school day at Southwood Middle School in Miami turned into a nightmare. 14-year-old Michael Hernandez asked his friend, 14-year-old Jamie Goff, to meet him in the bathroom. The two had been close friends, sharing classes and spending time together regularly. Goff had no reason to suspect anything was wrong when he agreed to meet Hernandez. Within minutes, Goff would be gone, stabbed more than 40 times in a frenzy that shocked investigators and the community. Hernandez had been planning this for some time. Found in his possession was a journal containing a hit list of potential targets, along with detailed notes about serial offenders he admired. He was obsessed with figures like Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer, studying their methods and mindset. His writings revealed a disturbing fascination with taking life and a belief that he had a mission to cleanse the planet of people he deemed unworthy. Goff, his friend, became the first person on whom he would act out these dark fantasies. The attack was discovered almost immediately when staff found Goff in the bathroom. Hernandez had hidden the knife in his backpack, but hadn't had time to dispose of it or clean himself up properly. Blood evidence and witness testimony quickly pointed to him. He was arrested at the school within hours of the incident. Despite the overwhelming evidence, Hernandez initially tried to claim innocence, but his journal and the physical evidence made denial impossible. The question that haunted investigators and mental health professionals was whether Hernandez was legally sane. His obsession with serial offenders and his detailed planning suggested someone who knew exactly what he was doing. Psychiatric evaluations were conducted, but ultimately, experts determined he understood right from wrong and could appreciate the nature and consequences of his actions. He was found competent to stand trial and to be held fully responsible for his choices. In 2008, Hernandez was convicted of first-degree charges in adult court, despite being 14 at the time of the incident. He received a sentence of life without the possibility of parole. In 2016, following changes in sentencing laws regarding individuals convicted as juveniles, Hernandez was resentenced. The life without parole sentence was modified to life with the possibility of parole after 25 years. However, Hernandez would never face a parole board. On March 16, 2021, at 31 years old, he passed away in prison from what was reported as a heart-related issue. He had served 17 years of his sentence at the time of his passing. His story ended not with release or rehabilitation, but with an early ending brought about by health complications. But sometimes fiction and reality blur in dangerous ways. Daniel Bartlam. On April 25, 2011, emergency services responded to a fire at a home in Redhill, Nottingham, England. Inside, they discovered 41-year-old Jacqueline Bartlam, who had sustained severe head trauma before the fire started. Her 14-year-old son, Daniel, claimed he had woken to find an intruder in their home who had attacked his mother and started the fire. He described the intruder in detail, giving police a description and account that seemed plausible. Investigators quickly began working to find this mysterious attacker, unaware that the real perpetrator was standing right in front of them. Daniel's story began to unravel as forensic evidence was analyzed. There were no signs of forced entry, no evidence of an intruder, and Daniel's account contained inconsistencies that became more apparent with each retelling. When police examined Daniel's computer, they found something that would prove crucial to understanding what really happened. Daniel had written a detailed story about the perfect ending that closely mirrored the circumstances of his mother's demise. He had then deleted the story, but forensic computer experts were able to recover it. The story Daniel had written was remarkably similar to a plot from the British television series Coronation Street, in which a character was attacked with a hammer. Daniel had become obsessed with this storyline watching it repeatedly and apparently deciding to recreate it in real life. The line between fiction and reality had blurred for him to the point where he saw his mother not as a human being who loved and cared for him, but as a character in his own story. Someone whose demise was merely a plot point in the narrative he was creating. On the night of the incident, Daniel struck his mother with a hammer 7 times as she slept. He then wrapped her body in paper, doused it with petrol, and set the house on fire, attempting to destroy evidence and cover up what he had done. The fire was contained before it could spread throughout the house, preserving crucial evidence that would ultimately lead to his conviction. When confronted with the recovered story and the forensic evidence contradicting his intruder account, Daniel eventually confessed. He admitted to planning and carrying out the attack, to writing about it beforehand, and to attempting to cover it up with fire. The premeditation was clear, as was his understanding that what he was doing was wrong, evidenced by his attempts to conceal it and create an alternative narrative. At trial in February 2012, Daniel was convicted despite his age. The jury heard evidence about his planning, his inspiration from television, and his cold execution of a plan to end his mother's life. The judge sentenced him to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 16 years before parole eligibility. In passing sentence, the judge described the act as grotesque and senseless, noting the betrayal of trust between mother and son and the calculated nature of the planning and execution. As of 2025, Daniel remains incarcerated in the British prison system. He would have been 27 years old, having spent his teenage years and early adulthood behind bars. The next case would shake an entire community's sense of security. Nehemiah Griego. On January 19, 2013, emergency responders arrived at a home in the South Valley area of Albuquerque, New Mexico, to discover a scene of unimaginable tragedy. Inside the home, they found 5 family members who had been shot. 51-year-old Greg Griego, 40-year-old Sarah Griego, and their 3 children, 9-year-old Zephaniah, 5-year-old Jael, and 2-year-old Angelina. The family had been well known in their community, active in their church, and appeared to be living a typical family life. What investigators would soon learn was that the person responsible was 15-year-old Nehemiah Griego, the oldest son in the family. Nehemiah came from what outwardly appeared to be a stable, faith-centered household. The family was large, with 10 children total, and they homeschooled their children while being deeply involved in church activities. Greg Griego had worked as a pastor, and the family was respected in their religious community. There were no obvious warning signs that would have predicted what was to come, though Nehemiah later revealed he had been struggling with dark thoughts for some time. On the night of January 18th into the early morning of the 19th, Nehemiah took several rifles from his father's collection. He first went to his parents' bedroom, taking his mother's life while she slept. He then proceeded to end his father's life. After taking his parents' lives, he moved through the house systematically, taking the lives of his 3 younger siblings. The children were asleep and never had a chance to defend themselves or escape. The entire incident unfolded quickly and quietly, with none of the neighbors hearing anything unusual. After the incident, Nehemiah left the house and went to church, where he attended a service as if nothing had happened. It was there, hours after the tragedy, that he confessed what he had done to someone at the church, who immediately contacted authorities. When police arrived at the family home and confirmed what Nehemiah had described, they arrested him and began trying to understand what had motivated such an act. Nehemiah told investigators that anger had driven him, that he had been having both self-destructive and harmful thoughts directed at others. He also revealed he had been planning to take his actions further, intending to go to a populated area and continue harming people before ultimately being stopped by law enforcement. His confession was detailed and showed an understanding of what he had done, eliminating any question about whether he comprehended the gravity of his actions. The legal proceedings were lengthy and complex. In 2015, Nehemiah pleaded guilty to 5 counts of second-degree charges and related offenses. The plea agreement allowed him to avoid trial and potential conviction on first-degree charges, which would have carried even more severe sentencing. In 2019, after additional appeals and hearings, he was sentenced as an adult to 3 life terms plus 7 years, with all sentences running concurrently. He will be eligible for parole consideration after serving 30 years. As of 2025, Nehemiah is serving his sentence at Lee County Correctional Facility in New Mexico. He will not be eligible for parole until approximately 2043, when he will be in his mid-40s. The next case shows that even those facing the ultimate penalty can find unexpected mercy. Paula Cooper. On May 14, 1985, 15-year-old Paula Cooper and 3 other girls skipped school in Gary, Indiana. They decided to commit robbery to get money, ultimately choosing to target 78-year-old Ruth Pelk, a retired teacher known in the community for her kindness and willingness to help young people. Pelkey agreed to let the girls into her home under the pretense that they wanted to take Bible lessons. Once inside, the situation escalated into what would become one of Indiana's most controversial cases regarding juvenile sentencing and the potential for redemption. The 4 girls attacked Pelkey in her home, with Cooper stabbing her 33 times. They stole approximately $10 and Pelkey's car, leaving the elderly woman to perish from her injuries. The brutality of the attack shocked the community and law enforcement. Pelkey had simply tried to help young people, opening her home to them, and had paid for that generosity with her life. The senselessness of the act, the minimal amount taken, and the victim's vulnerable status made the case particularly disturbing. Cooper and her accomplices were arrested within days. While in custody, Cooper reportedly bragged about what she had done, showing no apparent remorse in the immediate aftermath. This behavior influenced prosecutors' decisions about how to charge her. Despite being only 15, Cooper was charged as an adult and faced the possibility of the most severe penalty available under Indiana law at that time. What emerged during investigation and trial was a picture of a young girl who had experienced significant trauma throughout her life. Cooper had been a chronic runaway, attending 10 different schools as her family moved frequently. She had been physically harmed by family members, witnessed her mother being assaulted, and endured her father's violent behavior. Her mother had even attempted to take Paula's life. This background of instability, witnessing harm, and experiencing trauma herself created a young person who was deeply damaged and acting out in increasingly severe ways. In 1986, Cooper was convicted and sentenced to be executed, making her the youngest person on the row in the United States at that time. In 1989, Cooper's sentence was commuted to 60 years. Removing her from execution status, she served 28 years in prison, during which time she earned her high school equivalency diploma and participated in various programs. Those who worked with her in prison reported significant change and growth, though Cooper herself would later express that she never felt worthy of the mercy she had received. Cooper was released in 2013 after serving her time. She attempted to rebuild her life, struggling with the weight of what she had done and trying to find purpose in her remaining years. However, the transition to life outside prison proved difficult. On May 26, 2015, just 2 years after her release, Cooper took her own life. She left behind a note expressing that she had taken someone's life and never felt worthy of continuing her own. Not all cases, however, involve cold calculation or long-held darkness. Cody Posey. On July 5, 2004, law enforcement in New Mexico responded to reports of a missing family at a ranch owned by journalist Sam Donaldson. Working at the ranch were Paul Posey, 34, his wife Tryon, 44, and Tryon's daughter Marilea, 13. Also living and working there was 14-year-old Cody Posey, Paul's son. When investigators arrived, they discovered that Paul, Tryon, and Marilea had all been shot. Cody was found at the ranch, and his account of what happened would reveal a case that was far more complex than a simple act of youthful aggression. Cody told investigators that he had shot his father, stepmother, and stepsister after years of mistreatment at their hands. His account described ongoing physical and psychological harm that had escalated over time. He said his father would strike him, burn him with hot rods, and subject him to constant criticism and humiliation. Tryon allegedly participated in this treatment as well. The incident, Cody explained, occurred when his father slapped him once again, and something inside him finally broke after years of enduring such treatment. After the incident, Cody attempted to stage the scene to look like an accident or outside attack. He placed the bodies in a manure pile, trying to conceal them. He also took items to make it appear that a burglary might have occurred. These actions showed awareness that what he had done would have serious consequences, even if he believed his actions were justified by the years of harm he had endured. The trial became a battleground over competing narratives. Prosecutors argued that Cody had simply acted out of anger and that his claims of mistreatment were exaggerated or fabricated to justify his actions. They pointed to the fact that he had shot not only his father, but also his stepmother and stepsister, neither of whom posed an immediate threat to him at the time. The defense, however, presented extensive evidence of the environment Cody had been living in, arguing that years of ongoing harm had left him in a psychological state where he could no longer cope with the situation in any other way. Multiple witnesses, including Cody's aunt, testified about the conditions he had been living under. They described seeing bruises, witnessing degrading treatment, and hearing about incidents that painted a picture of a household where a child was being systematically harmed by the adults who should have been protecting him. His aunt stated publicly, he needs help, emphasizing that Cody was himself a victim who needed treatment and support rather than simply punishment. In 2006, a jury convicted Cody of voluntary manslaughter in his father's case, acknowledging that provocation had played a role. He was convicted of second-degree charges in Tryon's case and first-degree charges in Marilea's case. However, because of his age at the time of the incident, the judge sentenced him to juvenile detention until he turned 21, rather than imposing an adult prison sentence. During testimony, details emerged about what precipitated the final incident. Cody said that his father had slapped him and that this slap was more than he could handle after everything else he had endured. The statement captured the accumulation of harm over years and the breaking point that can occur when a young person sees no other way out of an intolerable situation. Cody was released from custody in 2010 when he reached 21 years old, having served his juvenile sentence. During his time in custody, he completed his education and participated in programs designed to help him process his experiences and develop healthier coping mechanisms. His uncle stated that Cody had a bright future ahead of him, and that the family believed he deserved a chance to build a life after everything he had been through. As of 2025, Cody Posey maintains a low profile, living privately away from media attention. This was all from our side today. Thanks for watching. Click here to check out another video.